and welcome to Sci-light. This is my science highlight show where I talk to you about some of the coolest research that I found in the news over the past week. My name is Julia and I am a final year PhD student. I'm currently writing up my thesis. It is going very, very slowly, but I'm almost on my way to becoming a doctor of neuroscience. Let's start off with some cool science hot off the press this week. So gender splits were still a thing about 19,000 years ago. We've just been given a little snapshot into our lives from millennia ago based on some footprints that were uncovered in Tanzania. These footprints were found on the shores of Lake Natron and there were 408 in total. These footprints were preserved by the volcanic ash on the ground, and these steps were thought to have occurred just before the last glaciation. And this is a period of an ice age when it gets really, really cold. Footprints give us something really special which we can't really deduce from bones and artifacts, and that is they give us a bit of action. The footprints uncovered were believed to be from 14 females and 2 older males plus 1 younger male, and this was all done based on the size of the prints. So that isn't 100% accurate. The researchers said it's between 50 to 60% accurate, but that is what they've deduced based on size. What the group have speculated is that these were 14 females who were out foraging, being accompanied by several males. And the reason they came to this conclusion was because back when these prints were found, which I'll get to in a minute, this was around the time of hunter-gathering tribes, and when individuals were out foraging they would normally walk along the shores of lakes. As well as this set of footsteps, the researchers also found 6 steps of footsteps going in the other direction. One of these sets had really long strides, which implied someone was running, whereas the length of the other strides implied that individuals were either power walking or they were leisurely strolling. This is a tougher scenario to process as a group, so the researchers concluded that these steps were most likely made on separate journeys. So these folk were potentially conveying different types of messages based on the speed of their walking. When food is scarce, you wouldn't just be legging it for fun. Now, how old exactly are these footsteps? So based on the layer of ground just above them, the researchers dated a material called calcite, and they found that this material was between 10,000 to 12,000 years old. Now, because that material is in the layer above the footsteps, it means that these footsteps cannot be younger than that, and the researchers predicted they could be up to 19,000 years old. Pinning this exact time down will rely on more data and more footsteps which are yet to be unearthed at this excavation site. So yeah, it looks like women and men still had separate roles thousands and thousands of years ago. Another really interesting piece of research that I saw this week was that individuals who are going to go on to get a brain disease called Huntington's can be shown to be different from controls as early as 24 years before they're due to get symptoms. Huntington's is a disease which causes the death of brain cells in a very specific area of the brain, and what this leads to is uncontrolled movement. This disease is inherited, and the gene that is affected is called HTT, and it codes for a protein called Huntington. If one parent has the disease-causing variant in the HTT gene, that means that each child will have a 1 in 2 chance of also developing the disease later in their life. At the minute, there is no cure for Huntington's disease, although there is some really cool trials going on at my university at the minute. But if there were to be a fix for this disease, it would come in the form of treating individuals who you know are going to go on to get the disease before they have any symptoms. And this is because we know the direct genetic cause of this disease, and that means that we have something specific that we can target in individuals known to be susceptible to getting Huntington's. This length of time varies from family to family, but across the board with all of these neurodegenerative diseases, it is thought that symptoms are the result of prolonged damage to the brain. This means that irreversible changes are happening in the brain many years before we're even aware that they are. So we would want to ideally treat people before any of this silent damage is done. Researchers have just published work showing that they can detect changes in a protein called NFL in the spinal fluid of individuals with Huntington's disease compared to controls. This small but significant increase in this protein, which is known to be released when brain cells are damaged, was seen in about half of the Huntington disease carriers. These These individuals had no other cognitive problems, and it was about 24 years before they were expected to get actual symptoms of Huntington's disease. This is so long before symptoms, but it already looks like the brain is changing in these individuals at this point. So not only is this research really important for future treatments and therapeutics, but also for researchers to understand the underlying mechanisms which cause Huntington's disease. Plus, it can also help other researchers to understand this long pre-symptomatic duration in these neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. So a really interesting piece of research which will inevitably change people's lives who have these genetic mutations. It is time for my Sci-light of the week. My final story of the week is all about pain. Well, actually, pain prevention, so it shouldn't be too painful to listen to. Have you ever really hurt yourself, and then for those few seconds afterwards, you're just looking at the area of your injury, waiting for the pain to flood in? This is because pain processing actually happens in your brain. So when you hurt an area of your body, the signal has to travel from that area up to your brain to tell you that it's painful. But there are some instances where pain can be shut down completely, and this is even in the case of really catastrophic injuries. An example of this is soldiers in a battlefield who have absolutely terrible injuries and can somehow manage to get themselves to safety without registering much pain. This adrenaline-fueled inhibition of pain has been well studied, but it is thought that there could be a pain centre in your brain which is vital in the role of switching pain off completely. However, this is still not really understood, but researchers now possibly have an answer for us because they found a region of the brain which is active when pain is inhibited in mice. And surprisingly, this brain region was found to be in the amygdala. Now, the amygdala in the brain is associated with processing negative emotions and also with your fight or flight response. But researchers found that when they activated a small population of cells in this brain region, mice receiving a painful stimulus no longer felt pain. This is really interesting because it looks like there could be an active brain area that is there to stop pain coming in. This was only a subset of cells known as CEAGA cells in the amygdala. Very catchy name, but basically just based on their biology, they are slightly different to other cells surrounding them. But because it's such a specific target that looks like it's switching pain off, we can try and target this with drugs. And this could really help individuals who have chronic pain disorders. But that is only if this region works in the same way in humans, because this study was done in mice. But super interesting and could be really beneficial to millions of people across the globe with these chronic pain disorders. So that is my Sci-light done. Time for some clickbait science headlines, and this week I've chosen one because it's my subject field, so I was like, doesn't sit quite right with me. And the headline was, dementia gene doubles the risk of severe COVID-19, scientists warn. I did a post on my Instagram about this study, and it was really interesting because researchers have found a link between a gene which increases your risk of getting dementia later on in your life and contracting severe COVID-19. This gene is called ApoE, and if a person has a rarer variant of this gene, which is caused by genetic mutations called ApoE4, they are more at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease when they get older. And if a person has 2 copies of this ApoE4 gene, they then have a more increased likelihood than a person who has 1 copy of this gene. But if someone is ApoE4 positive, this does not mean they are going to get dementia. And on the flip side of that, an individual can get dementia without having the ApoE4 gene. So this is not a dementia gene like the headline said, it is a risk factor gene. The language used in this title is very definitive, like this gene doubles your risk. The study done was a correlation study, so a link has been shown, yes, and it was in a large population but there were caveats to the population that they tested. The population tested was 400,000 people. What they did was they removed these individuals who were reported to already have had dementia from clinical notes. But these clinical notes were last updated in 2017. So it could be the case that this relationship is being pulled by individuals who now have dementia, who were included in the analysis, and having dementia could lead to many other factors which would leave you more at risk of getting COVID-19, such as frailty or living in a care home. This work was also done based on positive COVID-19 tests in the UK between the months of March and April. And at this point, most people who were tested were being admitted to hospital. So we're not getting a complete picture here between this genetic variant and the risk of COVID-19. I thought the study was a really great first step in looking into this relationship. And if there is a biological link, that will be really interesting, but needs to be confirmed with lab work. So what annoyed me wasn't the study at all. It was the headline, like, this gene causes this, when it's all based on a correlation study, so you really cannot make that assumption. I will keep my eyes peeled though for any new research that comes out surrounding ApoE4 and COVID-19, and I will report them on here. Thank you so much for watching Sci-light this week. I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope you've enjoyed, the better quality recording I've got going on, because I finally bought myself a new camera. You could probably tell compared to the potato I used to record on. If you like the content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any science you want me to talk about, to highlight, to say this is clickbait and this is why it's annoying, then just message me on social media, or you can also email me, juliaraviscience@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all for more science next week.